Wednesday, March 24th, 2010, informational meeting. Katie, could you please give us a roll call, please? Here. Thank you, Katie. On our agenda today is a report from Richard Gall, a presentation on authentic community youth engagement, which is a subcommittee of the Strengthening Families Task Force. We're going to have Barb Garcia, our community development manager, probably give us a little briefing on the Strengthening Families. She did an excellent job last night with the first annual mayor's report on the Strengthening Families and Task Force from Rapid City. And so with that, I will introduce Ms. Barb Garcia.
Thank you. I am going to give you an abbreviated version of last night's because I do want to try to leave as much time for Richard Gall to speak to you because it's going to be something that's new for our community. We just want to give you an update on where we are with the committee. It's been in place now for a little over close to 2 years come July. Originally, just as a reminder, the task force was set up and confirmed by Mayor Hanks when he first took office. We adopted the platform. The task force met to review that platform. We identified what programs and services were already in existence. We reviewed the community needs assessments that had been done to that time, both by United Way and our housing surveys. We identified top 5 priorities at that time to address as a committee. And then we decided to break up into individual committees for those 5 high priority issues. We asked an additional 40 advisors to come on board to help us with each of those issues that we came up with. If I can get this to turn. In 2008, we added 2 existing task forces to our Strengthening Families umbrella. The Black Hills Area Homeless Coalition, we kind of brought them into the fold, and our Affordable Housing Task Force that was already in existence. In 2009, 2 new initiatives were added, and that was our Offender Reentry Program and our Poverty Reduction through Asset Building. The committees that we have going right now, there are 9 of them. The first one is the Affordable Housing Committee, and I am the chair of that one. Early Childhood Development and Child Care, Rebecca Andrews has taken that seat as chair. Homelessness, Vicki Lynn and Andrea Denicky Harriman. One is the outgoing president of the Homeless Coalition. The other one is the new current president, and they've been spearheading that one. Mental illness and substance abuse, Sandy Deagle is the chair, and she has co-chairs of Linda Kohoff Glover and Stephanie Schweitzer Dixon. Our Offender Reentry Program was originally begun with co-chairs of myself and Sergeant Wayne Asherick from the police department. We now have our new coordinator that we hired, Maureen Rolfing, who's taking my place on that committee, and Sergeant Tony Harrison is replacing Wayne. The Poverty Reduction through Asset Building, Bonnie Spain is the chair, and I help her with co-chair. Transportation is Lloyd LaCroix and myself. Truancy and dropout rates, Judd Thompson and Jeff Norris. And youth involvement in community and government is Paula Wilkinson-Smith. The goals that the affordable housing set up were to have develop more affordable workforce housing in all areas of town. We wanted to create more transitional housing to help offenders and people with substance abuse issues to give them a place to stabilize before moving back into the community. More single-room occupancy housing. Many of our homeless and offenders are single persons, and there is no assistance for housing. All of the subsidized and assisted housing through Section 8 vouchers is for families with children, not single persons. Subsidized housing for larger and generational families. We have many families where 2 or 3 generations are living together, or they're just large, and there aren't enough apartments with more than 3 bedrooms. emergency shelters for chronic homelessness and alcoholics who can't stay at the mission. The accomplishments over the past year and a half or 2 years is NeighborWorks Dakota Resources created our first land trust, and that is providing permanent affordability by the person not having to pay for the land, only for the house. And they've put their first properties into the land trust, so that is up and operating now. Cornerstone Apartments, we created 24 units of transitional housing for families with children. We have 2 organizations currently trying to identify properties for transitional housing for people with substance abuse issues, sort of similar to halfway house concept, to help them get established before going back into the community. And we have local nonprofit housing agencies that are building homes to suit the sizes of families. We have 4 of them working right now in our community, and that would be Dakota Resources, the Community Development Corporation, Black Hills Area Habitat for Humanity, and the Teton Coalition. The goals that the Early Childhood Development and Child Care Center set were to have standardized pre-K education so that all children entering school would have the same level playing field and level of development with social and educational ideas. More affordable child care with standardized programs. Some child care centers offer a lot of activities for children, others don't. And so the children, as they are entering school, have different levels of abilities, and we're trying to create a level playing field for everyone. The accomplishments over the past year, a survey was done of the working parents to identify what the needs in the community are, the availability of child care, and the quality of that child care. That report has been presented to the community and survey of findings, and that will be posted on my website. We've also been participating and pushing participation in South Dakota Voices for Children statewide summit on children and families in poverty. This is an annual summit that they're holding. They established cornerstones for the viability of families, which is very similar to what our platform has, and this is a statewide effort in economic security, housing, health and nutrition, education, and building public will are all part of that. Under homelessness, the number 1 priority goal was to create a 5-year strategic plan to end non-voluntary homelessness. And they've been operating for many, many years, but without a plan. And so it was hard to stay on track to actually accomplish anything. Rapid connections to services. We want to get people linked to services and out of the missions or off the streets as quickly as possible. And we want to consolidate those services into one location, a one-stop center. The accomplishments to date, they have created an annual Homeless Connect Day. This will be our 4th one. It's on June 17th this year, I believe. We participate in an annual point-in-time homeless count to try to keep up with the numbers and what they're doing, whether they're going down or moving up. And unfortunately, over the past couple of years, they've been climbing. Increasing participation in the State Homeless Consortium and Planning Action Committee. The West River area has not been well represented on that committee, and it's the committee that decides what projects are funded through the State Homeless Consortium. And so it's very important that we build that and get more people involved, and we are. The Black Hills Region Homeless Coalition is now working with a consultant to develop that 5-year strategic plan to end involuntary homelessness, and they hope to present that plan by May 1st. Mental illness and substance abuse. Goals determined under this, and this is probably one of the most difficult challenges we have is what this committee is undertaking. They want to create a mental health substance abuse system change collaborative. In other words, get all of the providers together to work to have a collaborative effort for making real inroads into the problems. They want to reduce inappropriate admissions. Many of the people are taken the emergency room, jail detox, who have a mental illness and actually don't need to be there. And that costs us more every time they're taken to an inappropriate place. They want to improve access to after-crisis follow-up. and mental health and substance treatment. Often people can't go directly from leaving their treatment back to the community successfully. They need ongoing counseling and support. And they want to improve service integration and community awareness of services and issues around mental health and substance abuse. They wanted to organize committees and create the collaborative community plan. 4 committees: service infrastructure, service collaboration, prevention, and family advocacy. The Service Infrastructure Committee, their number one goal is to develop a fully operational 24/7 crisis center. That will give us a place to divert the people from the detox, jail, and emergency room. They want to also have community case management. In other words, many organizations are serving the same client, and it is much better if they can coordinate those services and everybody knows what everybody else is doing so that they aren't going at opposite directions with the client. They want to provide intermittent professional care until a permanent provider is acquired. Sometimes it takes a while to get approved for the assistance for a program, and in the meantime, they're without medications and they're without counseling. They want to also have a demographic and needs assessment with appropriate consents for treatment. So they want to actually be able to assess the needs of the person. Monthly networking meetings of all of the providers and more community education. The Collaboration Committee wants to ensure the collaboration of all of the entities, provide easily accessible mental health and substance abuse services. They want to empower and strengthen the families, where the families actually have a say in the treatment. If you don't have the buy-in of the family, it's not going to work. If they don't like the plan, they aren't going to follow it. So this is a paradigm shift within that industry to actually have the family have a say. They want to, and that's to empower and strengthen those families. And they also want to provide a mental health first aid course. It's a 12-hour training course to help the public understand issues about mental health and substance abuse, but especially mental health crisis, how to help identify those, and then how do you react and how do you help that person when you find them. The Prevention Committee wants to work to unify community efforts, empower and strengthen families, and they want to increase the knowledge and collaboration among all of the providers, the agencies, provide additional training and ongoing identification and prioritization of the education of current needs. Family Advocacy Committee is one that they want to help. This is where they will actually work with the family and help them through the system, understand the system, and in developing their own plan. That one is still a work in progress. All of these committees have required an intense amount of work by many, many people to even get to the area where they all agree on the terminology and where they're going with this. So they've made great, there we go. What they have done so far is they've gotten a coordinator hired, similar to our reentry coordinator, somebody who can spearhead and keep the whole movement moving. And that's Elise Radigan, who has been hired to do that. The 4 committees are formed, as we said. They've all already put together their mission statements and their vision statements, and they're currently outlining or already have their problem statements together. They're also trying to figure out how to track their results. They've got the first aid course up and going. I've attended one that they put on here in town. It's excellent, and any business, any organization in town should talk to them about doing that. It's very, very helpful. Applications for grants have been submitted, and as you've heard, I know I sent out announcements, as did Sandy Deagle, that we're in the second round of consideration for Robert Woods Johnson for our 24/7 Crisis Center. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. The Offender Reentry Program, we developed that program, and our number one goal is to reduce recidivism by 50% over 5 years, so by 10% per year for each of those 5 years. The accomplishments that we've got in place, we developed and have up and running the reentry program. I think to date we've probably spoken with at least 10 or 12 offenders for various types of help. We've partnered with the State Department of Corrections to write a Second Chance Act grant for the state, of which we were a recipient, and we've just gotten our 4th referral through the state. The committees will be meeting this week or next week on that. We have hired Maureen Rolfing to be our reentry coordinator, and she's in place and meeting with agencies now. And she's just coordinating our first meetings to start our mentorship program for the offenders. Under transportation, we need to address the special needs of the homeless, low-income, and ex-offenders who are receiving case management services. They have a very difficult time getting to jobs, to their appointments. Some of them because of the issues they have, whether it's mental illness or substance abuse. Offenders, it's hard to get the jobs, hard to get transportation, hard to get identification. So we're working on a 24/7 access to transportation for them, and hopefully consolidate the various little van services that the agencies have had to create to get their own clients around town. We've met with the agencies operating their van services and found out who was interested in chipping in to create this program. We've done a survey of their services that they provide and the needs of their clients. Where do they need to be? How often? What time ranges do they need to get there? And now we're in discussions on how to consolidate those services and possibly create this new service for them. Truancy and dropout rates. The goals were to abolish chronic truancy, and they set the goal of reducing truancy by at least 1% a year for each graduation year, and to reduce juvenile crime rates by 1% per year. They also have a K-5 collaboration with elementary principals and Act Now, which is the organization leading this committee, to work with schools to get them to report truancy. Many of the schools were not actually reporting it to them so that they could follow up. And so that's opening up that conversation within the schools. They want to continue agency and community collaboration to develop more, to develop our youth for their competition eventually. In other words, to get an education so that they can function within our society. They want to work to change legislation to allow alternative education options for dropouts returning to school. Within the current legislation, if they are working on a GED, under this law, they have to go back to school. They can't finish it on their GED. They have to actually go back and take classes. And for some of the folks that have been out of school for 3 or 4 years, at their age, to go back to the level they were at and try to complete is not realistic and is disruptive for the classes. So they're working on changing the legislation. What have they accomplished so far? The juvenile diversion program has been expanded. It's now, Judge Kern's actually running the truancy court now at Horace Mann, General Beetle, and Central High School. Parental workshops have been provided. These are information sessions. They're voluntary for their attendance, but it's also to inform parents about the importance of the kids being in school and the liabilities they incur if their kids aren't in school, because there are some legal liabilities for them. And to help give them some tools on how to deal with the kids who are cutting classes. They did a few truancy sweeps for informational purposes. They found out how many kids were absent from school on a day, and many of these were without excuses. Parents had not called into the schools. So they did some truancy sweeps to find out where are the kids and what are they doing. Many of them were actually found at home with parents. They were out sick, but they just had never called into the school to notify them. And so they educated the parents about the need to do that. Those who weren't in school, they went searching, but they didn't do anything. My understanding was on these sweeps, they just provided information to the parents and warnings about what they needed to do. 70 to 75 kids who dropped out have returned to school this year. Under the new law, it's required that they come back to school. And what benefit is that to us as a community? Well, dollars that are received for education are based on the number of students in school. That 70 kids at $4,500 a head amounts to $315,000 more in education funds that the city received. So that's a positive result. The juvenile arrests dropped by 14% in the past year as a result, we hope, of the actions of this committee and the work that they're doing in education and in follow-up of the truancy. 39% increase in total truancy referrals to the state's attorney's office. That means that the schools are actually calling and reporting when the kids are truant. They have filed an amendment to the bill that was passed, and it is in the House, passed by the House Education Committee, and it's still going through the state system. There's continued collaboration. All of the agencies are still very active on that committee. Poverty reduction through asset building. The goals were to encourage savings by people, create that safety net, and to do some incentive programs to do that. Create asset building programs by which home ownership and some of the other traditional ways that people build assets to fall back on when things get tough. Link the unbanked to mainstream banking so they keep more of their own money. Provide more education programs to help people understand how to handle money at all different levels, from those who have no knowledge whatsoever of the system up to those who have some but maybe haven't considered saving for retirement or education. And to expand job training and job skills program opportunities. That's one of the key ways to raise yourself up out of poverty, is by increasing your earning capability. The accomplishments year to date, there are 2 individual deposit accounts called IDAs with matching funds for savings. They match 4 to 1. For every dollar the person saves, they match $4 to that one. The savings must be targeted towards increasing your education, increasing your job skills, starting your own business, or purchasing a home. All of those are things that will increase your ability to survive. We support AARP and VITA sites that are providing free tax preparation and linking people who are eligible for earned income tax credits and child care tax credits. They may not know they are eligible for them, and they may not make enough money to file a tax return, but to get those credits, you have to actually file a return. So it's part of the education program is to do the outreach to the community to get those people in, because for many of them, they could get between $3,000 and $4,500. Well, for many of them, that's a couple of months living expenses. And so for them to not access that is a shame. So we're trying to correct that. Financial literacy and homebuyers education, so people make better decisions about spending their money. And then the creation of our new Bank on Rapid City program to connect the unbanked and underbanked to mainstream financial products. The banks who are wishing to be part of that program have been submitting their surveys to us of what products they have in place, and we'll be moving forward. In fact, we have a meeting this week, and we'll be moving forward with getting that rolled out. We're hoping to roll that program out by June 1st. That's our goal. Youth involvement in community and government. The goals are to engage youth in community and government at all levels. We want to give youth a voice. We want to implement a comprehensive, authentic youth civic engagement plan. We want to mobilize our citizens to focus on the building of assets in our children and youth. It costs us far less to develop and provide things to children when they're very young, so that when they grow up, they aren't involved in gangs and problems, that they feel nurtured and loved and have the things that they need to be successful, the education, and so we want to mobilize and do that. Some of the accomplishments so far: we completed a youth mapping project. That was a survey to find out what activities are available to children and youth in our community now, what is out there that they can use. We accomplished a youth survey regarding what are youth doing, what are their concerns, and what are they interested in. We contracted with a consultant, Richard Gall, to develop a strategic plan for implementing our authentic youth engagement, and he's going to speak to you about that. He's been doing presentations in our community since the 17th. He is here to help us inform the community of why this is important, what it is, how do we achieve it, what kind of involvement do we need to do that. He's going to discuss with you a survey that was done that points out some of the things that we as a community really need to give some consideration to. Richard Gall is a national trainer from Onsite Insights Company. He's assisted other National League of Cities communities to engage youth. In fact, I got to speak to him about 3 years ago at a National League of Cities conference that I attended. He was a speaker there, and that's where we got some of our ideas about going forward with this program, and we're very happy to have him here to help us do that. He'll provide consultation, presentations, and training to our community. He'll help guide us in the creation of a true strategic plan to incorporate youth. And at this point, I would like to introduce Richard Gall.
Magic. Good afternoon. I'm really honored to be here today. I'm going to move this over so I can push the buttons. Sorry about that. Today I want to talk to you about a new initiative, one that has come out of your Mayor's Strengthening Families initiative, and that's the Authentic Youth Civic Engagement opportunity. Also, as Barbara said, I want to talk to you about some results from a recent survey done in the Rapid City Public Schools that I think is very important information, and not information that you've ever had before from young people. So those are my two goals today. I also want to share with you that Rapid City, more than any other city I've ever worked with, and I'm over 200 now, cities in this country, I think you have the best chance of having this be effectively and appropriately implemented. You've got young people who are ready and willing to serve, very engaged, young people who are really looking to be engaged. You've got adult allies that are ready to help them. I've spoken to probably a couple hundred people since I've been here, and the energy for this to happen is strong in the schools. Their neighborhoods are excited about it. The nonprofits are excited about it. So people are getting very excited about the possibilities. So you have young people and you have adults. You also have a city council who has this as part of their planning, strategic planning process. So that kind of support isn't always there in other communities. The school board is behind this. The superintendent is behind this. I'm meeting with principals to get them excited about this as well. And also, very importantly, you have a community population that will allow this to happen. If you were 2 million, I wouldn't be here. This is the kind of an approach that works well from about 200,000 down. Above that, it gets much more difficult. So that's the good news is you're ready to do this, and you don't have much work to get to the results. Let me. I handed you a copy of this. Each of you have this. This is a survey that was done in January of this year in all the middle schools and high schools in Rapid City. We did a representative sample of young people. They were randomly selected so that it was guaranteed to be appropriate for the entire population. The survey is done by Search Institute. It's an organization that has been in business for about 45, 50 years. And they were working on looking at the development of young people, and they started to identify certain qualities that young people will have or need to have in order to thrive. And as they looked at that, they were able to identify 40 of those, what they call building blocks. They're the qualities and characteristics and experiences that every single young person needs to thrive. And in your booklet, and I'm going to read this because I know this goes out to the citizens. Thriving is not, we're not defining thriving, it's the one that looks like this in your booklet. Thriving is not defined by the absence of inappropriate behavior. We're going to be defining thriving in this process as thriving is steadily growing towards and becoming people with a positive sense of self, nurturing and responsible family members, effective communicators, people who make healthy life decisions, people who are involved community members and responsible global citizens, innovative problem solvers and appliers of a creative process, exemplary workers and lifelong learners, and caring and ethical individuals. All positive processes. We're going to try and figure out what's working with young people and how do they do more of that. You'll also notice that this is a journey. This isn't a destination. So much of the work that we do with young people is to get them to a certain point, and then we feel like we have accomplished something. Thriving never ends. Never ends. I'm still working on it at 65, so it's a process for all of us. And we need to start to think about this as a journey more than a destination, and this helps to do that. These 40 building blocks are also divided into two sections. One is that they're divided into the external building blocks. Excuse me. Those building blocks that exist in the community to serve young people. So the support they feel from the adults in the community and their services in the city and the schools, the boundaries and expectations that are placed on them, and do they understand the consequences? How many opportunities are there for them to have constructive use of their out-of-school time, and are they feeling like they're empowered? The other 20 are about their internal assets and how they respond to themselves. Do they feel like they have a commitment to learning, which is really what often divides successful people from unsuccessful people? Do they have the positive values that they will make decisions, the right decisions when nobody is around, nobody's looking at them, or they're going to be making the right decisions? It's easy to do it when somebody's watching. Do they have the life skills in order to be applying those values in ways that are going to be positive for them? And do they have a positive identity of themselves and their future? So let's look at how the young people in Rapid City responded. The survey was a yes or no. Either I believe I have an asset or I don't believe I had it. There was no shade of gray. It was a yes or no. Of the young people in the 6th grade in Rapid City, their average number of assets that they believed they had was 23.7. Now, Search Institute indicates that what their research has said, in order to be in a safe zone, so where the young person and his or her family feels like, you know, this kid is going in the right direction and, you know, barring some unforeseen thing, we're going to be making it through this without too many. It's difficult. They set that at 30. So while 23.7 is higher than all the others, it's still significantly below 30. You can see it goes down over time until the 11th grade, where it starts to go back up. 10th grade in every single community is always the worst. They're in between everything, and they're scared about going forward, and they didn't really like what they just left. And so there's a lot of turmoil. They're trying to separate from their parents, and some of them are doing well and some of them aren't. But this is the natural curve that you see in almost every community. What's different, now let me just show what the overall average is, 20.9. So overall, the young people in 6th through 12th grade believe they have just a little bit over half of the assets that they should have in their life, and about 9 below what the safe zone is. Now, I also want to say to you is that every single one of these numbers is higher than the national average. So something is going on in Rapid City that is giving young people the perception that they're doing better than young people in other communities. Every single one of these is higher. The average, total average in the country is 19.3. So over a whole single asset, and that's a lot in this kind of survey stuff. So the schools are doing something positive, the young people are doing something positive, the parents, the city, the neighborhoods. There are things happening here that are positive. None of these numbers are where you want them to be, but in relationship to the bigger picture, it's a very positive thing. That's another reason I have a lot of hope that this Authentic Youth Civic Engagement Initiative is going to be successful, because you're starting with more things working than many other communities. Let's look at why the power of assets is so important to protect young people. Take one of the 10 negative indicators that this survey measured, problem alcohol use. So the individuals were reporting whether they have or have not used alcohol once or more in the last month. Of those that said, I have used alcohol once or more in the last month, 55% of those that said yes also indicated that they have between 0 and 10 assets in their life, while only 9% of the respondents said yes that had 31 to 40. Every single one of the 10 at-risk behaviors has the same, the chart looks exactly the same. The numbers may be a little different, but it's always, the struggle is always with those young people who have 0 to 10, far more than with 31 to 40. One of the things that most communities do, unfortunately, is they focus on the symptom, the alcohol, and that's where the attention goes instead of building the assets. And so a large part of this process is going to be about shifting that mentality, not stopping doing the substance abuse prevention and treatment and all those things. Those are all still very necessary. But how do we build asset development within everything that we do so that those numbers start, so the numbers of assets and young people start moving to the right instead of to the left? This is also important in a community that is diverse, which is Rapid City. There is no difference between the cultures or the races in how assets impact them. Not shown on this, but also true, there's no difference in the socioeconomic reality. So all cultures, rich and poor, all of them, if you have a lot of assets in your life, you're not going to have a lot of high-risk behaviors. If you don't have a lot of assets in your life, you're not only going to have one, you're probably going to have all of them. And so another thing you learn from this, from knowing the asset information, is that young people, when they might get busted for smoking pot or something like that, they also have probably 9 other at-risk behaviors in their life. So dealing with one of those only takes away one problem. Building that individual's assets takes away all of them. It also helps to promote thriving, and remember that thriving definition. So getting mostly A's on the report card is one of the things it measures. There's 8 thriving indicators. You can see those that had 0 to 10 assets had only 11% of those individuals reported having A's on the report card, while 57%. Now, a lot of people say, well, this is common sense. Well, it's common sense that's not being applied in many communities. We are a country and a culture that focuses on what's not working. If we were business, if this country was a business, and it is in many states, it starts to fail because all the attention is on what's broken. And whatever you focus your attention on, that's what's going to grow. And so the more we focus on what's broken, the more that grows. The more we focus on what's working and doing more of that, that grows. I just wanted to quickly show that the same thing is true in cultures and socioeconomics on the promoting ones and the thriving ones as well. So what is the city's challenge? You can see how it's broken out. 14% of the young people in the community reported having or perceive themselves as having between 0 and 10 assets in their lives. 32, 11 to 20, 39, 21 to 30, and 15% of them are in that safe zone. So 85% of your population of young people in 6th through 12th grade are outside of the safe zone. In most communities, and I've only been here a week today, but in most, so I don't know all I need to know to make some statements, but in the majority, almost all of the communities I've worked with, about between 85 and 95% of the resources go to that 14%. School systems pay a lot of attention to the 15% and the 14%, and those are the two that get most of the attention. That 32 and 39%, or 71% of the young people, are the middle part that gets almost nothing from the city, from the schools, from the neighbor, regardless. Even in families that have kids that are in trouble and kids that are excelling and kids in the middle, those middle kids get lost as well, even in families. And so one of the things that authentic youth civic engagement does is it gives every single young person in this community the opportunity to thrive through service and through being part of being good citizens within the community. Brings those 71% that are somewhat ignored in our culture into the forefront. And they start to, we want them to elevate themselves and be valued and be empowered so that they're moving more towards that 15% or 31 to 40 assets instead of the other way. If that number down, if the lower number starts to growing, you're a dying community. If the 15 starts growing, you're a thriving community. So it's pretty easy to learn that. I'm only going to show you one of the categories, and that's empowering assets, because that's what we're going to be talking about. If you can see, 29% of the community, of the young people who took this survey, 29%, only 29% of them believe that the community adults value them. So less than a third of the young people in this community feel that city council, school board, neighborhood leaders, whomever is out there, only 29% of them value them. And any of us who don't feel valued, whether we be a young person or an adult, that affects how we behave and how we interact and how we feel about ourselves. So that number, that percentage has to grow completely. They also don't feel like they're being given useful roles. I have met nothing but incredibly competent young people in this community. They just blow me away. Regardless of their background, they're just very talented. And so there are a lot of things that this community will benefit by once young people start to have those kind of roles. The last one, I'll go to the last one here. And a lot of people wonder why feeling safe is an empowerment. It's there because if you don't feel safe, you can't feel empowered. It's an impossible thing to do. Safety is a critical issue. You have over 50% of your young people who feel safe, but a subcategory of that, which isn't shown, only 45% of your female young people feel safe, while 65% of the young males feel safe. Young females are feeling less safe in this community. That's too low a percentage to feel comfortable about, and so that's something that really should be addressed. So what is authentic youth civic engagement, and why do you do it? This is an important concept that shifts the paradigm completely. Most of the time we do things for kids because we think it will be good for kids. When I'm from Hampton, Virginia, we were the originators of this concept in 1990. We were the architects of the authentic youth civic engagement process. And we took a bold stand when we did this because our city was dying. We were landlocked and we had no usable land, so we had to change the people who were doing business in our community. We wanted to attract businesses that really would raise the economy in our community and raise the level of income of our citizens. And when we went to these communities, they said, well, you don't have a workforce that attracts us, and so why would we come there? And when we looked at what they meant by, when we asked them what they meant by a workforce, they talked about leadership skills, they talked about team building, they talked about decision making, they talked about a lot of things that aren't the key focus of our educational systems. And so this whole engagement process was started for economic development reasons, not because it would be good for kids. We, to a person in our community, feel that if we focused on this because it would be good for kids, it wouldn't have lasted more than 2 years. We would have been out, wouldn't have worked. We absolutely felt that by bringing young people into the mix, our city would be better, our schools would be better, our neighborhoods would be better, our youth-serving organizations, our businesses, across the board. If we improve those systems, we would save money because the young people would be moving in the direction of thriving instead of in the other direction. Our costs, every single one of our negative indicators was going up every year before 1990, and every one of our thriving indicators was going down. So we were dying. From 1990 to 2009, the exact opposite. Every single year, our thriving went up and our at-risk has gone down. That's why to do it. So moving Rapid City's focus is what we're really talking about. And we're talking about exploring new ways to enhance and impact young people and their efforts to help the city. So what most communities, and I don't believe that Rapid City is any different, they really focus a lot of their services on impacting the individual young people. A lot of what Barbara talked about really looked at, making sure they have housing, make sure they have good education, make sure that, all those different things, focusing on the individual, which is critically important. None of these things can stop. There are also approaches that bring the young people together and group them, like gang prevention or dropout prevention. So while it increases the potential to reach more young people at a time. But what the Authentic Youth Civic Engagement process does, it is impacting the community so that the community norms and the community behaviors start to change to make it more livable for young people and more encouraging of young people to thrive. And when that happens, the whole culture changes. And most people have a real hard time understanding. I mean, this is a real shift. And so why do so many good efforts fail to produce really good results? You've got great programs, you've got great people doing those programs, but what you have is still increasing numbers on the at-risk. So why is that? Why? The same thing was true in our community. Exactly, we had great programs, but our negative indicators kept going up. Well, there's a professor at Harvard University, Ron Heifetz, who's the head of their Public Leadership Institute, the founder of that. His theory is that there's two kinds of problems or two kinds of challenges that leaders such as yourself or the school board or anybody in a leadership role has. The first is technical. It's technical not because it's easy or because it's not complex or anything like that. It's technical because somebody already knows how to do it. There's a system already in place that you can give that to, and with very little additional authority or supervision, that gets solved. Emergency room is a great example of that. People go into emergency room in trauma, from acute trauma to having a headache and wanting aspirin. And so there's a complex of things, but it functions because everybody knows what they're supposed to do. They do it when it's appropriate, and they move on, and it keeps moving along, and it's successful for the most part. But they never address the reason that the individual came in. It's just what caused the problem that got him there. It's just to fix the problem, get him out. Ron Heifetz says that all the other challenges in the world are adaptive challenges. And they're adaptive because there isn't can't be solved by somebody providing answers. There's no system that exists to effectively address the challenges. And to do it, to effectively, you have to require new experiments and new discoveries and shed some entrenched ways. So trying to solve substance abuse the way we have always done it hasn't worked. It just hasn't worked. All of these issues need us to try new experiments. Part of what Barbara was reporting are some of those new experiments and new discoveries that you're, as a community, you're starting to think about. This is one of those other adaptive challenges. Because what's needed in an adaptive challenge to be successful is everybody has to be willing to try new things and change how they think, believe, and their behaviors around the issue. And this issue is about young people being seen as resources, not as just recipients. So there's two things that are required to create an authentic youth civic engagement. It's about building a structure that allows every single young person to have an opportunity to participate. There isn't any single young person that should be denied for whatever reason. If you only ask, where do you want to go, instead of where have you been, people will join. It's when you start to classify them as good or bad or rich or poor or whatever the distinction is, everybody's the same. Let's all move, and what kind of structure is necessary to do that? It's also about building relationships. We have lost in this country relationships between adults and young people. It's become punitive in a lot of situations. It's become fearful in a lot of situations. I know when I was young, I had a whole lot more people looking after me than my grandson has looking after him in the community. I mean, that has hurt us as a culture. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but this is one system that brings back building relationships between youth and adults, which changes the relationships between youth and youth. What are the benefits to the city? Inclusive decision-making is always a better way to make decisions. Bringing young people to the table to give their input is always it's a positive thing because they have insights that none of you have. There is no way that anybody in a leadership role in this city can know what it feels like to be 17 years old living in this city. You may think you know, you may have a 17-year-old son or daughter that will tell you what he or she, but there is so much depth and so much variety to the thought of a 17-year-old. Having that information when you're making a decision that impacts them is critical. Not just their parents, not just the business owner, but their decisions. So an inclusive decision-making is a benefit to your community. The more that young people buy into the decisions that you make, the better your decisions will be followed. If they are part of the input, they will be part of the buy-in. They will the young people in my community defend my community as hard and as strong as any adult in our community. They speak out for our community, not against our community, because they have input. We have 9,500 teenagers in our community. 5,000 of them are involved in this process every single week. It reduces risk behaviors. When you are involved in giving back, you are not as involved in taking away. And so the more you get involved in doing the right thing, the less you will be involved in doing what people define as the wrong thing. That's supposed to be building social capital. Building social capital is what we do. We try to find people who support what we believe is an economically viable and family-friendly community. The people who support those actions are your social capital. Adding young people to that social capital makes your job easier, makes the school board's job easier. Because when you have young people behind you, believe me, it changes the dynamics. The decisions you will make, going back to that first one, are better because you have more of an insight. You're not abdicating your right to your responsibility to make decisions. You're just adding information to it so that your decisions are better. And you're investing in the future citizens and its leaders. When we started this process in 1990, we had less than 1% of our young best and brightest coming back to our city. Less than 1%. And I don't remember any of them. I never talked to that less than 1% because they didn't exist. Nobody wanted to stay in our community. It was a dying community. As of 2009, our latest figures are over 26% of our best and brightest, not the ones that can't get out, the ones that want to come back. And they are, some of them are 35, 40 years old now, and they are becoming the leaders of our community. Now, you have a high percentage of young people stay and want to stay in this community already. Increasing that and making sure those really high-achieving young people don't go off to California or to New York or St. Louis, keeping them here and really developing the technology and the new businesses that are going to help make this thrive is critical. Having a voice, when we asked the young people, that's 26% that came back, why did you come back? Every one of them indicated, they said other things, but every one of them indicated because of the way they were treated when they were young. That's why they came back. They wanted that for their children as well. There are also benefits to young people, builds their skills and experience, and and makes them better for when they do come back, but it really gives them the skills to go off and do whatever they need to do. It changes their way they learn. School is not the only place for learning anymore. It's the whole community, and that changes them as citizens also. And when and you can read the rest there. But they're also citizens now, and they become part of your fabric of why this city will be great. This is the structure that I'm talking about. Creating pathways in the city, schools, and the overall community. There's 3 pathways. The first is just like in any adult, we gravitate to those service projects or those, we give blood, we give money, we help a neighborhood cleanup, things that are quick, things that are easy, things that don't require a lot of training, but they make us feel good, they make us feel like citizens, they make us feel like contributors. Majority of young people want to do that also. They want to feel good about themselves and the community. And so the majority of young people, that's where they wind up, just like us as adults. But some of us adults also want to give input and consultation. They want to help make decisions. They want to help the people who are in charge make better decisions. Young people are no different. In our community, we have advisory groups across every spectrum of the community. Our superintendent of schools, all of our principals, our city manager, our city council, our school board, they all have, all of our department heads in our city, they all have youth advisory groups that help them make better decisions. And the last one is shared leadership, where young people and adults sit together with equal vote and equal responsibility. So that young people in our community sit on every board and every commission that we have, at least 2 on every board and every commission, and many of the committees that we have in our community. We also hire young people to serve in our city government because, once again, they know what it's like to be 17 and we don't. The arrow on the left means that as you go up there's no greater importance in any of these levels, and you can see they're broken lines, so you can be in any one of them at any given time. But as you go up, the pathway at the top has more global impact than the ones on the bottom, but more young people gravitate, on the arrow on the right, more young people gravitate to the ones on the bottom. I'm not going to go through these because I just did. I just told you about those. The challenges to the community are going to be seeing young people as resources. How do we see young people not just as recipients of what we as adults need to give them, and that's a very important task. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be recipients, but when you add to that, they're also resources, they become citizens, and not just recipients of the community's resources. And your resource allocation goes down because you've increased your social capacity. You got to change the environment in which young people are functioning. So you have to do all those things that Barbara was saying, improving the housing, and all those things have to happen. But you also will change. The challenge is to allow young people to be seen as valuable, so that businesses welcome them in instead of being afraid of them coming in and following them when they're walking around the stores. So that they when they see a group of young people, you're assuming they're doing something positive instead of something negative. So changing the environment and the way you think. Sustainability, everything costs money. This one doesn't cost a lot. This is one of the cheapest things in our governmental structure. But it does cost some money. It does require people to oversee it. It does require a network of people to support it. And so keeping that, especially over turnover. So when you guys turn over, or the mayor turns over, or the school board, as people come in, keeping this as an important agenda item is critical. And then challenges of keeping the edge, keeping on the outside of what is the status quo. The status quo is usually what hurts anything from becoming really great. Staying on the edge and trying new experiments and new approaches. Now, I also gave you another sheet that's entitled Impact Youth, had on Hampton's policies and procedures. On that sheet is both what young people have done to address the city policies. This is what young people have done. And on the back is what they've done with schools. And I don't have a slide on this. These are impacts that have happened in other communities. Crime reduction, in our community, 54% reduction in juvenile crime in 1 year when the young people got involved with a neighborhood that had a real high crime rate. Young people and parents and police working together to reduce the crime, 54% reduction in 1 year. The Bill of Rights in Portland, Oregon is just an incredible document that young people crafted, and the city council and the county commissioners approved it, and it identifies what rights young people have, children and young people have in that community about education and health and et cetera. So if you've never seen it, go online and see that. It's incredible. There's some other stuff up there also. The first decision, our city manager, we have a strong city manager council form of government. The city manager met with his youth advisory group, with the planning director, and there was a building that was going to be built for a neighborhood that wanted a youth center in their neighborhood. It was ready to be approved the next day. The city council was a 7-0 vote. They already said they were going to vote for it. The community presented it to the parents and the young people in the community, and the young people listened, and the presenters were all puffed up and saying, "Wow, look at what we're doing." And the young people at the end said, while we really respect you and value how much you love us and how much you want to help us, you need to know we're not going to go to that building. It doesn't have anything in there that we will ever use. And it had basketball courts, and it had game rooms, and it had all the things that we as adults think the young people wanted. And this was a 100% African-American community district in our community. And the young people said, it's time we stop thinking that way. It's time we start thinking about the fact that we need tutoring, we need job enhancement skills, we need all these other things. They redesigned the building. 2 years later, it opened, and you can't get in it. It's so packed all the time. That's just one. We have Youth Planet. I already mentioned that we have people working in every one of our departments. A national movement right now among young people who are intellectually challenged is to remove or eliminate the R word from people's vocabulary. And that's being totally driven by intellectually challenged people, and it's changing the world and how the world views them. So it can work with anybody. It works with anybody. The city-based stuff, I mean, I'm not going to read them, but when you involve young people, the city actually saves money, creates better policies, really gets a real change in the community. And these young people do it because they care about their community, not because they're getting credit for it, or not because that's fine. That's all can happen, but they do it because their heart is as strong for their community as yours is. And so we're hoping that over the next, I have one more slide. This is the last slide. I think it's really important. I think it drives what we'll be doing. I want to read that. The gaping hole in many of today's youth is a sense of place in the community and a stake in that community. The absence of such bonding strikes at the very heart of what it means to be a person, which is, in part, being beholden to others. It also strikes at the very heart of our political structure. For if teens do not view themselves as being subscribers to the social contract, they will see no sense in following it. And community after community after community are doing that. They're not including them as subscribers of the social contract, and their high-risk behaviors are going up, and their thriving behaviors are going down. So bringing them in not only helps them, and it will naturally help them, but it changes your community. Thank you for your time. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Richard. I'm going to open it up for questions in just a second. I forgot to mention that we are going to be recorded, and it'll be on the public access channel from this morning from talking with the mayor. So I just want to remind the committee members that here. And I wanted to thank them for taking time out of their day for this meeting and presentation. One of the things I did want to mention with the Strengthening Families Task Force is a direct result from the National League of Cities conference in December of '07, and here we are 3 years later, and you've just seen the accomplishments of that. With the subcommittee of the youth engagement, they did an outstanding job on this. I mean, this has been a work in progress for 2.5 years. We went from the youth council thought that we were going to do to this. And so I think it's just amazing as where it's went. At this time, I'd like to ask Paula, is a lot of the members in the audience today, would they like to stand up and?
We have one member of our
Okay.
committee here. I'm looking around to make sure I don't miss anyone. Mert Tice is here. Several, we've been having, as Rich said, so many presentations.
This is 18.
Okay. Well, anyhow, I'll recognize, that's Paula Wilkinson-Smith. She is the chairman of the Youth Engagement Committee and Lifeways Director. We have Judge Tice in the audience. He's a member of the deal, and we appreciate all the work that you've done. At this time, I'll open it up for questions from anybody on the council. Well, I will say, Richard, this is my third meeting of yours, and each time I grasp a little bit more. Part of the opportunity, part of what you talk about is opportunity, giving the opportunities to the youth. And I think that's a very outstanding, because often, as you've said in your presentations, I think we, as adults, we've tried to protect, and we try to think that we know what's best for them. And it's a lot of times that holds back on the opportunities to give them to learn. And I kind of perceive that into the workforce too. I mean, a lot of what you talk about works for all ages. It's a matter of respect, giving opportunity, and not judging a few for all, and I think that's what I've gained the most from all your presentations. And I think the concept of working on the 71% is ideal. I think that's where we need to go. Did you have a comment? And I'll close with that, and I'll recognize Alderwoman Karen Gunderson Olson.
Just thanks for this huge effort. It's great to see the kids in the back. Everybody's paying attention. I can relate to this as a mom. We used to have family meetings when our kids were little, and the rule was everyone got to be the chairman. And when the 5-year-old was the chairman of the meeting, it didn't go so fast, and the big sisters complained. And we said, everybody gets a chance because everybody learns. So I can see that this concept, when you take it into the broader community, has huge impact. So thanks, everyone, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
And we're going to be making CDs and hand them out to the rest of the council, so they'll have that information too. And I'd just like to make a reminder that tomorrow night, I think it's at 7 o'clock, North Rapid Civic Association meeting. Richard will be there presenting to them. And they were very excited to have you, Richard, because they're trying to get young people to get into their group so they can process up. So we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow night.
I'm looking forward to it too, Lloyd.
Thank you, guys. So you to adjourn? The motion's been made to adjourn. All in favor, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. We're adjourned.